Hello everybody, this is Uncle E, and we are back with Social Media Book Club. Readers are leaders, and we are actually going through the book, The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, going through a law a day. And you know what they say, if you put it in a book, no one will ever find it. Well, we are changing that, and we are actually going through the book. So get the book, go along with us. Law number 8, let us begin. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. Judgment. When you force the other person to act, you are the one in control. It is always better to make your opponent come to you, abandoning his own plans in the process. Lure him with fabulous gains, then attack. You hold the cards. Keys to power. How many times has this scenario played itself out in history? An aggressive leader initiates a series of bold moves that begin by bringing him much power. Slowly, however, his power reaches a peak, and soon everything turns against him. His numerous enemies band together. Trying to maintain his power, he exhausts himself, going in this direction and that, and inevitably he collapses. The reason for this pattern is that the aggressive person is rarely in full control. He cannot see more than a couple of moves ahead, cannot see the consequences of this bold move or that one. Because he is constantly being forced to react to the moves of his ever-growing host of enemies and to the unforeseen consequences of his own rash actions, his aggressive energy is turned against him. In the realm of power, you must ask yourself, what is the point of chasing here and there, trying to solve problems and defeat my enemies if I never feel in control? Why am I always having to react to events instead of directing them? The answer is simple. Your idea of power is wrong. You have mistaken aggressive action for effective action. And most often the most effective action is to stay back, keep calm, and let others be frustrated by the traps you lay for them. Playing for long-term power rather than quick victory. Remember, the essence of power is the ability to keep the initiative to get others to react to your moves, to keep your opponent and those around you on the defensive. When you make other people come to you, you suddenly become the one controlling the situation, and the one who has control has power. Two things must happen to place you in this position. You yourself must learn to master your emotions and never be influenced by anger. Meanwhile, however, you must play on people's natural tendency to react angrily when pushed and baited. In the long run, the ability to make others come to you is a weapon far more powerful than any tool of aggression. Study how Talleyrand, the master of the art, performed his delicate trick. First, he overcame the urge to try to convince his fellow statesmen that they needed to banish Napoleon far away. It is only natural to want to persuade people by pleading your case, imposing your will with words. But this often turns against you. Few of Talleyrand's contemporaries believed Napoleon was still a threat, so that if he had spent a lot of energy trying to convince them, he would have only made himself look foolish. Instead, he held his tongue and his emotions in check. Most important of all, he laid Napoleon a sweet and irresistible trap. He knew the man's weakness, his impetuosity, his need for glory, and the love of the masses, and he played all this to perfection. When Napoleon went for the bait, there was no danger that he might succeed and turn the tables on Talleyrand, who better than anyone knew France's depleted state. And even had Napoleon been able to overcome these difficulties, the likelihood of his success would have been greater were he able to choose his time and place of action. By setting the proper trap, Talleyrand took the time and place into his own hands. All of us have only so much energy, and there is a moment when our energies are at their peak. When you make the other person come to you, he wears himself out, wasting his energy on the trip. In the year 1905, Russia and Japan were at war. The Japanese had only recently begun to modernize their warships so that the Russians had a stronger navy, but by spreading false information, the Japanese Marshal Togo Hikachiro baited the Russians into leaving their docks in the Baltic Sea, making them believe that they could wipe out the Japanese fleet in one swift attack. The Russian fleet could not reach Japan by the quickest route, through the Strait of Gibraltar and then the Suez Canal and the Indian Ocean, because they were controlled by the British, and Japan had an ally of Great Britain. They had to go around the Cape of Good Hope and at the southern tip of Africa, adding over more than 6,000 miles to the voyage. Once the fleet had passed the Cape, the Japanese spread another false story. They were selling to launch a counterattack. So the Russians made the entire journey to Japan on combat alert. By the time they arrived, their seamen were tense, exhausted, and overworked, while the Japanese had been waiting at their ease. Despite the odds and the lack of experience in modern warfare, the Japanese crushed the Russians. One added benefit of making your opponent come to you, as the Japanese discovered with the Russians, is that it forces him to operate in your territory. Being on hostile grounds will make him nervous, and often he will rush his actions and make mistakes. For negotiations or meetings, it is always wise to lure others into your territory or the territory of your choice. You have your bearings while they see nothing familiar and are subtly placed on the defensive. Manipulation is a dangerous game. Once someone suspects he's being manipulated, it becomes harder and harder to control him. But when you make your opponent come to you, you create the illusion that he is controlling the situation. He does not feel the strings that pull him, just as Napoleon imagined that he himself was the master of his daring escape and return to power. Everything depends on the sweetness of your bait. If your trap is attractive enough, the turbulence of your enemy's emotions and desires will blind them to reality. The greedier they become, the more they can be led around. The great 19th century robber Baron Daniel Drew was a master at playing the stock market. When he wanted a particular stock to be bought or sold, driving prices up or down, he rarely resorted to the direct approach. One of his tricks was to hurry through an exclusive club near Wall Street, obviously on his way to the stock exchange, and to pull out his customary red bandana to wipe his perspiring brow. A slip of paper will fall from his bandana that he will pretend not to notice. The club members were always trying to foresee Drew's moves, and they would pounce on the paper, which invariably seemed to contain an inside tip on the stock. Word would spread, and members would buy or sell the stock in droves, playing perfectly into Drew's hands. If you get other people to dig their own graves, why sweat yourself? Pickpockets work this to perfection. The key to picking a pocket is knowing which pocket contains a wallet. Experienced pickpockets often ply their trade in train stations and other places where there is a clearly marked sign reading "Beware of pickpockets." Passers-by seeing the sign invariably feel for their wallet and make sure it is still there. For the watching pickpockets, it is like shooting fish in a barrel. Pickpockets have even been known to place their own "Beware of pickpocket" sign to ensure their success. When you're making people come to you, it is sometimes better to let them know you are forcing their hand. You give up deception for overt manipulation. The psychological ramifications are profound. The person who makes others come to him appears powerful and demands respect. Filippo Brunelleschi, the great Renaissance artist and architect, was a great practitioner of the art of making others come to him as a sign of his power. On one occasion, he had been engaged to repair the dome of the Santa Maria del Fiore Cathedral in Florence. The commission was important and prestigious, but when the city officials hired a second man, Lorenzo Ghiberti, to work the Brunelleschi, the great artist brooded in secret. He knew that Ghiberti had gotten the job through his connections and that he would do none of the work and get half the credit. At a critical moment of the construction, then Brunelleschi suddenly developed a mysterious illness. He had to stop work, but pointed out to city officials that they had hired Ghiberti, who should have been able to continue to work on his own. Soon it became clear that Ghiberti was useless, and the officials came begging for Brunelleschi. He ignored them, insisting that Ghiberti should finish the project, until finally they realized the problem. They fired Ghiberti. By some miracle, Brunelleschi recovered within days. He did not have to throw a tantrum or make a fool of himself. He simply practiced the art of making others come to you. If on one occasion you make it a point of dignity that others must come to you and you succeed, they will continue to do so even after you stop trying. It's a little long, but this is law number 8 from the 48 Laws of Power. We're doing social media book club. This is Uncle E. Hope you enjoy your weekend. We'll see you again on Monday.